Well, this could in fact be the end. This is actually it. The rubber is hitting the road, and yes, UAW strike has commenced here this last week. And not only that, clearly that's going to impact the vehicles that you buy on the front line, whether it's from GM, whether it's from Ford or Dodge, Stellantis, you want to buy a Jeep, they're all going to be impacted by this strike. A, you're going to get less opportunity to buy them. B, prices are guaranteed to go up. And C, even if you want to grab some parts for yourself, you're probably going to be snookered. So lots has evolved in this last week. The big thing, of course, is the strike commenced because a lot of the frontline workers, UAW is doing this what they call stand-up, or essentially a form of strike where they're not hitting it widespread. There's about 12,000 and some workers on strike at selective plants. Plants, for example, the Ford Bronco plant is going to be hammered hard because that one's shut down. As well, the other plant for mid-sized pickup trucks for GM is getting hit hard. And then, of course, Jeep, the Jeep products, the ones that produce Wranglers, are going to be hit hard. Unfortunately, all these manufacturers are going to be hit. The big three, Stellantis, Ford, and GM, are hit this week because of some talks by the union. And they want what they believe is more, they basically want what they feel is safe, is fair. Now, we got to look back in the last, they say, about 4 years, allegedly, the CEOs, for example, the GM CEO has made about $28 million collectively as a combination of, the kickbacks, the actual salary, as well as all of the benefits for performance of the organization. $28 million GM CEO has made. So that's an insane amount of money. They're clearly doing very well for themselves. So they've averaged about a 40% increase in wage over the last 4 or so years within the top 3 manufacturers. But the workers, the frontline workers, the people that are actually doing the hard work, getting, the grease under the fingernails, the people that are bolting the fender panels on, the people that are assembling the engines, the people that are showing up every day, day in, day out, building these cars, are the people that only received approximately 6% wage increase over the last 4 years. Clearly well behind the idea of, meeting the target for cost of living increases, not even on anywhere near that range. So all they're trying to do is get a piece of what they believe is rightfully theirs. So that's not for me to decide. There's going to be mediators. There's going to be union talks between the manufacturers, between, of course, the union team leads, and of course, then, that might all flush out. Now, the unfortunate part is there's a lot of other things brewing as a result of this. Now the big three have actually responded with a counter strike. And did you know Ford is actually laying off now workers at the final assembly and the paint plants? Just because their justification is allegedly that without the products moving down the line, there's no need for these other workers. And those other workers aren't part of the strike deal originally, so they're getting walked off the site. And now there's layoffs as a result of some of these union talks. As well, on top of that, GM says that there's likely going to be almost 2,000 workers laid off there at their Kansas plant for the same reason. Now, there's going to be some other complications that's thrown into this mix. And clearly, with the politicians at the helm right now at the federal level, they're clearly much more supporting of union environments. So that could create a really interesting brew of storms between manufacturers trying to drive for production, moving product down the road, and then, of course, the unions that are well supported at the federal level. Now, how that looks in reality, who knows? But we do know that this is all in the midst of this storm of electrified vehicles coming down the chute. Now, if this strike goes on and on, we're talking about mainly vehicles that are internal combustion vehicles. The pickup trucks that are gas jobbies from GM, from Ford. Even though Lightning's been poorly selling, their ICE vehicles are going to be heavily impacted by this. And of course, Jeep Wrangler's always one of the top sellers. Their pickup trucks, always good sellers as well. Right now, lots are full. I mean, that's interesting. And we knew about this storm brewing, so a lot of these big three have been building up and loading up their lots. They've been working actually on overtime to fill up their lots. Heavy overtime, working their workers twice as hard, work the weekends, work the evenings, getting more vehicles out down the assembly line and hit to the lots so that they can ride out some of the strike. Now, parts are going to be impacted as well. The thing you got to remember, back to the EV world, all of this storm, the longer this goes on, the more brands like Tesla or Elon sit there and giggle and smirk, because obviously the ICE, this is a transition plan. And unfortunately, by 2025, 2030, 35, all these different countries have their agendas to go pure EV. The longer this strike goes on and the longer lag that this creates, and the more that this pushes back production of internal combustion trucks and Jeeps and SUVs, the longer or the less availability you're going to have. And what do you think that means? That means if you got to wait another, so we pop out on the other end here, and then the strikes are done and everybody's happy, everybody's got their pay raises and everything's proceeding as usual. What it could result in a much longer wait time to get your pickup trucks. You want to go down, because remember, if this goes on for a couple weeks, few weeks, months, who knows, depending on how this goes on, this pushes back production. People are buying what's on the lots because nothing's coming from the factory. And then what you could actually have is a scenario where you've got to place factory orders again because there's no more vehicles on the lot. And then you're in a real snooker, in a real bind, because now that backlog is building. Because as we hit the end of this road, the hypothetical, like I said, you're going to be in a situation where people are going to be put back on waiting lists. It's going to drive prices back up. Competition's going to be fierce. And if you want to get that last piece of internal combustion technology, you're going to pay what you want to pay just to make sure that you secure that. So you have a truck that'll last another 5 or 10 years, and then it won't matter. But if you miss that window, consumers are going to feel the burn. They're going to feel the burn because they're going to be fighting with another person behind them waiting to get another vehicle. They're going to feel the burn because they're probably going to pay more money. These manufacturers are going to come out on the other end. If they're going to have to compensate workers on the front end, which, everybody has the right to their pay, absolutely. But CEOs are never going to take a hit or come up short on their end. So essentially, if you're raising costs to the frontline workers, which again, everybody, with inflation, it is what it is. And CEOs are making more and more every year. What do you think that cost is going to be transferred down to you and I? So if you're trying to buy that truck, let's just say you want to go buy that new GM, they pop out at the other end of this pension or union talks, you're probably going to wind up paying a lot more than you were even 2 years ago, even right now. There's a good possibility that all these prices are going to be jacked up if these big three are forced and held by the UAW to increase costs. You're just basically going to have a situation where that just gets transferred back down to the consumer, and we're going to pay more for these trucks. We're going to pay more for that Jeep Wrangler or that new Bronco in the next round, in the next production run. You're going to find that prices are going to edge up, edge up, edge up. So if we're adding another, 15, 20% to overhead costs in an organization, they're not going to lose out. These manufacturers are going to find clever ways, either do it on the front end in your face, or they're going to find other creative ways to get their costs or their money back in their pockets. So clearly, the unfortunate part in all of this isn't, the fact that the consumer, ultimately, let's face it, this is the unfortunate part, is the consumers lose again and again. The union workers want to get what's rightfully theirs. The CEOs continually try to grab it more and more, and it's the old greedflation thing kicking in full gear. But you have a situation, a perfect storm brewing, and the consumer is going to be left holding the bag with higher costs for purchasing. And the worst part is, this couldn't happen at a worse time. Now you've got Toyota ramping up, they're changing technology. They're also having difficulty getting product to the field. And if you want to say, hey, you know what, I'm not buying one of the big threes, I'm going to go buy maybe something from Nissan or something from Toyota. Well, they're in a snookered situation too, because they're doing just-in-time purchasing. So if you want to buy a new Tundra, you got to wait probably anywhere from 6 months to a year for a gas jobby. And if you want the hybrid version, then you're probably going to have to wait 1.5 to 2 years. So that's just where things are at. If you want a pickup truck, things are getting slim, and the consumer loses every single time. And this is where things are going to get interesting, because now with with the electrification just around the corner, it might in fact yield some of these plants and some of these vehicles obsolete in five to 8 years, you might find yourself not even be able to buy a car or truck like this from one of these big threes. You may not even want one, and it might be mandated out. So again, what we're doing is faced with a real predicament, and the big threes are going to be in a spot that might be the end of the road. So is a large truck market and SUV market doomed? Well, things aren't looking too great right now, but time will tell. So make sure everyone hit that subscribe button. Definitely trying to build it. I have much more great news. I also want to share with you how to buy that next vehicle, good, bad, or ugly. I want to help you avoid some of the knickknacks, tallywhacks, and the way that dealers like to grease the consumers. I want to help you walk through some of those events and some of those activities to make sure that you get the best deal possible. Hope to see each and every one of you on the next one. We'll see you real soon. Bye-bye.